we're trying to plan out that schedule and have them do a live BP, or do they feel like they need another live BP? So a lot of it's going to depend on where they think they are too as well.
Are you surprised that Eflin is this maybe far along as he is, or not?
Well, I think he's a diligent worker, but I think, we're extremely excited where he's at. We, because of the lockout and our inability to communicate, you weren't exactly sure where they was going to be at, but I saw him throw a bullpen yesterday, and he looked great, and he feels great today.
Are there, in terms of how you're building up these pitchers, are there lessons to be learned from 2020 and the short summer camp, or is this apples to oranges because it's, coming out of an off season versus coming out of a, 3-month in the middle of spring shutdown like you had then?
No, I think you can compare that. I do. Obviously they got started and we're moving along in the month of March, and I'm just going to guess the guys maybe had 4 or 5 inning starts at that point, but still we were shut down for a substantial period of time and they had to keep going. So it's similar. It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty similar, and we're not going to have a lot of time. But everyone's in the same boat and everyone has to deal with it, and you'll be in the 3rd and 4th week of April and we'll be back to normal.
What are the challenges for you with a 25-day camp, and on day one, not having several players here who are going to be here at some point, whether it's outfielders or other pieces of your team?
It's just the difficult part is for us is making sure that we don't push them too hard in the beginning, and making sure that they have their feet under them before they're playing in games, and not asking them to play at a pace that they're not ready to. And I think it's also holding the player back a little bit, because the player is going to say, well, I know I have less time, so I got to get ready quicker, and that could lead to injury. So I think communication is extremely important, and just in a sense, making sure they're going at the pace that they should be. Not rushing anything.
How about just in terms of preparing guys for certain roles? Dave was just talking about, Matt Vierling is a guy who could be in a platoon situation, whether it's center field or left field, and that'll obviously depend on some of the moves that can be made. What do you tell a player like that who's coming in here and other than to just be flexible?
Well, I think he's going to play a lot anyway. So it's not really going to change the way that we prepare him. We would play him in a few different spots anyway, because not knowing exactly what our club's going to look like on opening day, you have to be prepared. I mean, this is a kid that was even taking ground balls at second base, I think, just taking ground balls, because, we put him at first base last year. So, but I'll move him around, but he's going to play a lot.
Joe, was it the plan before the lockout to go slow with Zach Wheeler?
Yes.
It was?
Yes.
So this is the works all along?
Yeah, just because of his workload.
And how do you view shortstop? Do you view it as a camp battle between Stott and Gregorius, best man wins?
Yeah, we're going to obviously look at them both. Didi has a track record, and I think Didi really has a chance of bouncing back and having a big year. Because I've seen him do it year after year. But Bryson Stott, we're going to take a look at him. He had obviously an unbelievable year last year, and he continued it in the fall league, and seems to be in a good place. So it's going to be an evaluation.
And how about you, Joe? You were tough on yourself after last season ended, and you have an option. They haven't picked it up. Does that disappoint you? Does that make your job tougher in the clubhouse not having it picked up? And do you feel like you're on the spot at all?
No, I don't ever look at it that way. It doesn't make my job tougher. I'm going to do the same job no matter what. And I've never been extended in a season before, so it's something that I'm used to. You play it out, and just like players, managers have to perform, and it's a production-based business, so you got to perform.
You mentioned making sure that guys are progressing at the right pace. How big of a challenge is that without being in communication with them during the lockout? Guys are kind of doing their own things on their own
Well, the first thing that we did when we had permission, the lockout ended, we split up the team and made calls to see exactly what they were doing. And we kind of put it all in a little area and gave our coaches, and it was coaches and trainers, it gave our coaches an idea of where players were at, what they needed to do, how many bullpens they had thrown, had they seen live hitters, had they not seen live hitters, had they thrown to the bases, had they sprint, all those things to give us an idea. And then you take a look at them. So the communication, we made the list about 2 weeks ago, right? It just didn't happen 2 weeks ago because we wanted to be prepared as quickly as possible. So the communication has taken place. We think we have a pretty good idea where everybody's at, but we'll know more in the next couple of days.
Gotcha. And how was this? I mean, how was this lockout for you? Just not being able to communicate with your players. How did you?
Yeah, it's really difficult. You feel like it's almost a situation that you're being hired the day before spring training, and you're taking a new team because there's obviously changes every year to a team. I had a chance to talk to Corey, but it was brief. So I mean, there's a lot of things that happen that you would normally do over the winter you weren't able to do, and that had, that's as well in the front office too. Like usually your team's put together by the time you get to spring training. So some of the guys I'm going to have to get to know fast. So it was strange, but I've been through it before, but it was as a player. But back then, coaches weren't in touch with players as much as we are today, and trainers weren't. You couldn't Zoom back then. I don't think any of us really had cell phones back then, so it was much more difficult.
Do you expect your leadoff hitter to come from the presumed new left fielder / center fielder, or do you think there's an internal guy or two that you can see? Because that was obviously a huge problem for you.
Correct. I think it's something we're going to have to evaluate once we see all the pieces. I won't necessarily put too much time into thinking about that now because I don't know what our team's going to be like in 2 weeks. So to me, that's kind of wasted energy because there's a lot of things that could change in the next 2 weeks. So, but it is an important spot that we fill.
And the plan, I guess, is still to spread around the DH at bats.
Yes.
I'm wondering, as a former catcher, say JT would catch 135 games. How many games could you see him in the DH spot in terms of getting him in the lineup more, but also giving him enough rest so he stays sharp behind the plate? Yeah,
that's something I think you have to evaluate on a daily basis. 135 is a lot of games. So if he catches that many, how many can he DH? That's a great question. It depends. Can you be strategic with him with days off? Does he catch a little bit more and DH, catch a little bit less and DH a little bit more? That's something that I'll look at. But, I mean, obviously, production is important, and if they get too fatigued, the production a lot of times goes out the window. So that's something that we have to pay close attention to.
Joe, you have a relationship with Didi. You know Didi over the years. Different guys will react differently to being challenged. Like you said, he has a track record. He's been around. He's been an everyday player in this game for a long time. How do you expect he'll react to having his job up for competition this spring?
Oh, I think Didi will take that challenge, and he's going to fight because Didi is a strong-minded person that really believes in himself. I mean, you have to remember this is a kid that had to walk into Yankee Stadium after Derek Jeter. I mean, that's a pretty tough thing to do, and he responded well. So I think he'll really take this challenge and fight like crazy.
And do you expect Knebel to be your closer? Do you know?
As of right now, yes. I mean,
what do you like about him possibly as your ninth inning guy?
I think his experience, number one. He's a pretty darn good closer when he closed in Milwaukee. His stuff, I love. He's got a good fastball and he's got a wipeout breaking ball. So, yes, I mean, he's our closer.
Joe, have you spoken to Didi about the challenge that sits in front of him?
I haven't. I spoke to him today briefly, as a lot of players will come in. But I mean, we talked to Didi last year. So before the season ended, we talked to him. So I mean, he understands what he has to do, and you know, that's the hard part sometimes about this business is it's a production-based business, and you know, there's always people trying to take your job. I mean, that's how it goes. And there's young kids coming up that are pushing, you know, trying to push you out. I had to deal with it a number of times, but Didi's a competitor. Didi's a fighter, so he's going to fight.
Anybody else have anything for Joe?
Joe, just expanding on Jim's question from earlier about, you know, how last year ended and kind of how, you know, you sort of put a lot of that on your shoulders. And does that stick with you for a while, like once the off season starts? I mean, when you go through a season like that and you end as disappointed as you were, how long does that kind of stick in your craw as the off season starts?
Through the playoffs, the whole time that the playoffs, and then when it kind of subsides, you know, your mind turns sometimes away from baseball a little bit. I mean, it's hard not to watch all the games on TV and see that, you know, you were just playing against the Atlanta Braves, and you know, they go on and win the World Series, and congratulations to them. They had to earn it, and they went out and earned it. But for that whole month, it's pretty difficult.
So are you kind of in like a rotten mood, or you know? Or you
No, I mean, obviously, I'm able to compartmentalize a lot of things because I've had to do it as a husband and a father. But I don't like seeing other teams on when I think it should be our team. I can tell you that.
And you know, you alluded to this. So I mean, you had plenty of seasons with the Yankees where, you know, you were in the last year of your contract. I know it doesn't change like the way you manage in a game or anything, but like human nature just being what it is, and people wanting to know where they're going to be for a while. I mean, how do you avoid that from creeping in?
The one thing that I think it's important to do in this game is to have a home base. And I have a home base, in a sense. It's where I live in the off season with my family. That's my home base, right? And that's not going to change. And you learn in this game. I played for, I think, 4 different teams, I think. I've managed 3 different teams. I've worked with 2 or 3 different like MLB and Fox and Yes, that you learn that this is just kind of your life, right? You don't know where you're going to be for a long time, but the one thing that I know that's going to be a constant is my wife, Kim, and the kids. And that's, I think, how you deal with it. You're going to move around, and you're going to live in different places and different apartments, and you know, you're going to have to get things ready, and so you just get used to it.
Not having contact or seeing any of these guys for a while, has anyone caught your eye? Just, and I know guys have been filtering in, but there's been some guys working out. Has anyone jumped out to you?
Well, I think that, like yesterday, Eflin's bullpen caught my eye. But I think everyone that I have seen looks fantastic physically, and they've been in a good spot, you know, before they got here. So, you know, there's little things that you notice, like Nola's hair shorter, you know, that kind of catches your eye. You're like, whoa, right? You know, I thought Bryce looked big, you know. So, I mean, there's little things that catch your eye, and everyone's not, I have not seen everyone yet, but it will happen during the course of the day. But those are kind of the things.
And one more about the bullpen. I'm sorry, Hector, you know, was a guy that you knew you could hand the ball to him quite often. Do you have enough?
70-something times, right?
Correct. Do you think you have enough guys, or will have enough guys out there that can make that up? I mean, it's quite a few innings that he pitched for you. And
you're right. That's a lot of work. I think we're addressing that, and Dave and the front office is working very hard to make sure that those innings are addressed and everything is addressed in our bullpen. And when we leave April 6th, that we will have plenty of arms down there to fill those innings.
you're in a division with the world champs who have a bunch of young talent, the Braves, and then you have the Mets who sort of seem to have an unlimited budget and an owner who's aggressive. I mean, is that daunting to be in the same division with those clubs? And
No.
the Marlins have great
Yeah.
clubs.
I mean, that's part of the game, right? It's part of the competition, and obviously we're going to be tested on a daily basis being in our division. But that's also something else that I'm used to, being in the American League East. The National League East is very tough. I think we were 9-10 against the Braves, and maybe 9-10 against the Mets, and so we know we're in a tough division, but we have a great owner and a great front office too, and we feel good about it. And I feel good about additions that we've made and additions to our staff that we've made, and we feel pretty good about our guys too.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We know that you